What's up, everybody? I know it's been a while since I've uploaded anything on my channel, but I finally got some time to put together my top 25 favorite films of all time. It took me a little bit to get this list together, I'm not gonna lie. For those who don't know, this was supposed to be a top 20 favorite films list, but then I kind of got really conflicted with not having certain movies on the list that I really wanted to talk about and really convey to you guys as what my favorite films are. So I just felt immoral for not including some more films, so I decided to make it a top 25 instead of a top 20. But before I go ahead and start this list off, just a fair warning, I intentionally decided to exclude the more cliche, the more iconic and well-known films that pretty much everybody already knows are great films. Films like Goodfellas, films like The Godfather, films like Scarface, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even though I absolutely love that film, I just figured, like, why would I put a movie like Citizen Kane or The Godfather on here when just millions of people have already talked their head off and wrote books about these films? So this list really is a more personal list where I try to include more unique films that maybe other people may not know about that I just really like a lot. I try to include classic films that I adore, and I also just more modern films that, are more recent. Just to try to create a really more diverse list. And also, just to clarify, this is again just a top 25 personal favorite movies list. This is not attempting to create like a top 25 just best objective movies of all time. This is not what this is. This is a list that comes straight from my heart and my brain, and I really hope you guys get a kick out of it. So let's go ahead and start with number 25. Yeah, so Deadpool is obviously my favorite superhero movie just because it's gonna be my favorite superhero movie by default, just because I'm not into superhero movies all that much. I think at this point in Hollywood history, superhero movies are getting a little overdone, a little tiresome. A lot of superhero movies just have the same kind of cookie cutter framework plot that everybody just keeps recycling. It's just, I don't know, it's a genre of film that I'm just really not too big of a fan of, and Deadpool just totally just takes everything that's conventional about superhero films and turns it on its head. Basically takes everything that I didn't like about superhero movies and kind of makes a big joke out of it, while also at the same time being a great film. And that's the reason why I really like it, because if it was just a big joke against superhero movies, I wouldn't hold it this highly. I would still like it, but I wouldn't hold it this highly. The reason why I hold it this highly is because, like I just said, it does a great job at pointing out and making fun of the conventions of superhero movies, while also on its own being a good movie. It has serious moments in it that I really do buy and get immersed in. There's character substance in this movie. The dynamic between Ryan Reynolds and his girlfriend, I thought, was really believable and really well done. And again, I just think it's astonishing that a film is able to kind of spoof superhero movies in a way while also just being a good movie on its own.
I'm not here for him. I'm here for you.
Oh. Okay, wow, dodged a big time bullet on that one.
Not out of the woods yet. You need to seriously ease up on the bedazzling. They're jeans, not a chandelier. Yes, I'm keeping your wallet. You did kind of give it to me.
Okay, just look, man, can I have my Sam's card?
I will shoot your fucking cat.
I don't really know what that means. I don't have a cat.
Then whose kitty litter did I just shit in? Anywho.
At number 24, we have Superbad. I love this movie to death. I think it's one of the most funniest movies ever made, obviously. This film, I've seen it, not even shitting you, probably over 40 to 50 times, and it just never gets old. This is, I believe, I don't think it's Seth Rogen's first attempt at writing. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not even sure who directed this. Was this Evan Goldberg? I don't know. Let me find the fucking Blu-ray. So it's written and produced by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, but it's directed by a guy named Greg Mottola. So I guess he didn't direct it, but this was one of his first attempts at writing of a full-length film, and I adore this movie. It's so rightfully explicit and just excessive with some of the language and humor. It's also just insanely quotable. I watched this movie when I was in 8th grade, and I still quote this movie almost on a daily basis. It's just a very well written movie, very well acted film. Everybody in this film gave pretty good performances, Jonah Hill especially. Michael Cera, you know, he became the awkward, just nerdy guy who is just terrible at talking with women. And, you know, he kind of got most of that shtick from this movie, and he got a little typecasted from this. But nevertheless, he was great in this film. Fogel, I don't even know the guy's name, but McLovin, he was great in this film as well. This is just... Oh, Emma Stone, too. This was Emma Stone's... one of her first films, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely a really early film of hers. And it's kind of crazy how huge of a star that she's become after this movie. And Jonah Hill too. You know, this film has Jonah Hill and Emma Stone, who both started out as, you know, not these big time actors, but now are being nominated for Oscars, which, you know, it's pretty insane.
I can get you guys alcohol.
Really? Seriously?
Yes, for sure.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you.
So
because,
good.
you know, we're worried about that. That would be great. Plus, you know, you scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours.
Well, Jules, the funny thing about my back is that it's located on my cock. So you do want alcohol? You want some sort of alcohol or no?
At number 23, we have a film called Y tu mamá tambien. Now, this is a film that I almost know for a fact that most people watching this right now have probably never heard of, or at least haven't seen yet. It's a film directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and if the name doesn't ring a bell, it's the guy who directed Gravity, Children of Men. He also directed Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban, which is personally my favorite Harry Potter film. So I'm a pretty big fan of this director, and this film is, for me personally, a must-see film for film lovers and just art film lovers, because there's really a lot to dissect from this movie. But at the same time, I do recommend to proceed with caution and to probably not watch this with anybody else, or at least not with anybody that you would feel uncomfortable watching some kind of explicit sexual stuff. But all the explicit sexuality that's conveyed in this film is incredibly useful and necessary and meaningful for the film's narrative, the film's characters, and just the film's theme in general. Because honestly, one of my biggest pet peeves in filmmaking is when I feel like films have these excessive sex scenes in it for really no reason besides just, oh, look at it, it's sex. Yeah, there's a lot of sexual stuff going on in this film, but for those who are watching this film with a trained eye, I think would know that those scenes and that kind of explicit visual stuff is in there for a reason. It's a very well directed film. The cinematography in it is pretty impressive as well. Alfonso's known for those long one-shot takes, and this film's got a few of them that are pretty nice. Again, the acting was great. It has two really famous Mexican actors, Gael Garcia and Diego Luna. This lady's name is also pretty famous. She's in Pan's Labyrinth, I believe. I don't know her name. Let me see her name right quick. Maribel Verdú. She's great in this film as well. Everybody in this film, just the acting is honestly really, really brilliant. There's this whole entire film, you don't feel like you're watching a movie. You really feel like you're just peeking in on what's happening. And a lot of that is thanks again to the acting, and also to its directing and aesthetic style. This, again, I highly recommend this film to people who really love the art of filmmaking and want to see something special that I think most people don't really know about.
¡Oh, ya! ¡Vete a la... ¡Clásico! ¡A huevo te tenía que salir lo pinche nacote, güey! ¡Pues este pinche naco te va a partir toda tu madre, cabrón! ¡Me la pelas, naco! ¡Me la pelas! ¡Bájate, cabrón! ¡Chinga tu madre, güey! ¡Julio de mierda! ¡A la verga! ¡Bájale, güey! ¡Naco! ¡Me la pelas, naco! ¡Metas, bájate! ¡Iros a tomar por culo a la mierda! ¡Vete a la verga! ¡Gilipollas! Pensé que erais distintos, pero sois las mismas bestias. ¿Qué manifiesto ni qué charolastras de mierda? Si ni siquiera respetáis vuestros propios mandamientos. Como todos los tíos, marcando territorio y dándoos de hostias cuando lo único que os gustaría sería follar el uno con el otro. Eso es lo que os gustaría.
At number 22, we have Adaptation, starring Nicolas Cage. And this is a film that's directed by Spike Jonze, and it's written by Charlie Kaufman. Charlie Kaufman is known for making films like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is a very highly held film. I really love this film a lot. It's got Meryl Streep in it, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think she served her purpose very well in this film. I think she acted her part very well in this film. And this movie really surprised me, because even though this movie's been out since 2002, I really never got a chance to see it until a few months ago. And when I saw it, I was pretty blown away by it, especially for the time that it came out. It's a very meta movie, as the hipsters like to say, meaning that it's just very aware of itself, and the way that it presents itself, it's like a movie that's within a movie that's within a movie. And to me, it was presented very well. The direction in this film, I think, was nearly flawless. Nick Cage's performance was pretty great. There's times where, again, like, he just has these caged out moments where you just can't help but laugh at it, but you still buy it, like you still are enjoying what you're watching. But no, overall, Nick Cage actually is good in this movie. He gives a pretty great performance. He had a pretty difficult task of playing two characters in one film and having to interact with himself, at least with his own imagination. And it just seems like not the easiest task for an actor to pull off, and I thought he pulled it off pretty well. It's a very funny film. It's a very intelligent film. It's a very touching film as well. This film surprisingly had me tearing up in the third act, just due to its creative execution and its creative writing. There was a lot of substance to this film that really kind of fused together in the third act that really conveyed something pretty meaningful, in my opinion. And again, highly recommend this film.
I meant to ask you, I need a cool way to kill people. Don't worry for my script. I don't write that kind of stuff. Come on, man, please. You're the genius. Here you go. The killer's a literature professor. He cuts off little chunks from his victims' bodies until they die. He calls himself the deconstructionist. That's kind of good. I like that. See, I was kidding, Donald. Oh, okay. Sorry.
At number 21, we have Shaun of the Dead. Now, I know most people were probably predicting that I was going to have one Edgar Wright film in this list. You probably didn't know which one. But, oh, and by the way, most of the films that I have on here, I tried my best to not include multiple films from the same director. So just keep that in mind. So from going forward, there's not going to be another Edgar Wright movie in this list, unfortunately. I decided to pick one of them that I just decided was my personal favorite and impacted me the most, and that happened to be Shaun of the Dead. First reason being probably just because it was the first Edgar Wright film that I've ever seen, and I watched it when it came out, and even though I was fairly young at the time, I was maybe only 12 or 13 years old, but it completely blew me away. The comedy written in this film is excellent. It's clever, it's intelligent, it's stupid and silly at times as well. It's very fast paced and witty. And again, the writing is phenomenal, just all around. I just think the writing is really the most praiseworthy thing, even though everything else in this film is very well done too. The comedy, again, it's really, really funny, and it even has some horror moments. There is some moments in this movie that are genuinely kind of frightening. I just really love this movie. Again, probably my favorite Edgar Wright movie out of The World's End, Hot Fuzz, and Shaun of the Dead. At least that's the Cornetto trilogy. Shaun of the Dead just won by a hair. And they're all great films, but if I had to recommend any of them for anybody to see first, if they haven't seen any, Shaun of the Dead is the one.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Oi! What are you doing? What am I doing? What are you doing, you stupid moron? Fuck off. You fuck off! Fucking off! Sure. I spent an entire life, look at me. I've spent my entire life sticking my neck out for you, and all you ever do is fuck things up. Fuck things up and make me look stupid. Well, I'm not gonna let you do it anymore. Not today!
Shaun.
Oh.
At number 20, we have Arrival. Now, Arrival is a Denis Villeneuve film, and like I said earlier, I don't have films in here that come from the same director, or at least multiple films from the same director, so this is the only Denis Villeneuve film I have on here, and I decided to pick this one over Sicario and over Blade Runner just because this one is just so emotionally impactful right from the get-go. It really tugs at your heartstrings immediately, kind of like the same way Pixar's Up does. It just immediately just grips you into the emotion that this film has to offer. And then on top of that, it's just both really just thought-provoking and kind of mind-blowing. And it expresses this in a very creative and unique way through its direction. And To put on top of that, the acting, the performances in this movie are pretty damn good. Amy Adams gives an excellent performance in this film. The score for this movie is just so mind-numbing and so hypnotic. Especially with how they express the whole language aspect of this film. That's another thing about this film that really just I thought was incredibly thought-provoking and just true. This film talks a lot about how language itself kind of shapes the way you think. It can shape your perspective on things, which is something that's just factually stunning. And this film expressed that idea in a very interesting way. And I just think that out of all of the Denis Villeneuve films that I've seen, Arrival just stuck with me the most and impacted me the most emotionally and intellectually as well. So I had to put Arrival on this list over the others.
You know, I've had my head tilted up to the stars for as long as I can remember. You know what surprised me the most? It wasn't meeting them. It was meeting you.
At number 19, we have The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Now, this might be an odd pick from most Wes Anderson fans, but for some reason, this is the Wes Anderson film that I've come back to more than all of his other films. This is the one that has always impacted me the most emotionally. This one, for some reason, has just stuck with me the most, and I understand that this one is probably one of the most least liked, even among Wes Anderson fans, but the critics as well weren't that fond of this film. But there's something about this film that just grips me emotionally, and it never fails to hit that note every single time. And it's just also, on top of that, it's just a very charming film, as most Wes Anderson films are. And I just really love the character dynamic between Owen Wilson and Bill Murray's character. I thought their character dynamic and their chemistry really grew as the film progressed, and the payoff for these characters were very well established and very well executed. Pretty much almost every character in this film I don't feel is underused. Mostly every character that's focused on, which is a lot. There's probably over 8 to 10 characters that this film tries to focus on in this movie, and they all kind of have their resolves. They all like by the end of this film, you realize that all these characters had their purpose in the story, and had their purpose for its theme or for its character themes or whatever it was doing. It was definitely there for a reason. Sometimes in Wes Anderson films, I feel like there's a lot of characters, but some of them are kind of underused. I felt that way about Isle of Dogs slightly, that there's a lot of characters, but they were not all fleshed out very well. But with The Life Aquatic, I feel like pretty much every character was fleshed out to a pretty decent degree. The score to this film and the soundtrack is also just very cute and fitting for the style that it's going for. This is just a wonderful film. I've probably seen this film over 20 times now, and I'm planning to keep watching it for as long as I live. And I know it's kind of an odd choice for, again, the Wes Anderson for the Wes Anderson catalog. Out of all of his films, this is the one that just keeps coming back up. So I really don't know what else to say.
Look, if you're not against me, don't cross this line. If yes, do. I love you all. Are you sure?
Yes, I am.
I don't understand. Why?
What do you mean? Wait a second, what are we doing? You said cross the line if...
Cross the line if you're going to quit.
Oh, do it again. I misunderstood.
At number 18, we have Interstellar. Interstellar was one of those movie theater experiences that I truly will never forget. I took up the offer to make sure that I saw this film 3 times in a theater, twice in IMAX, to make sure that I will never miss some sort of opportunity to see this movie again in the theater, because this was just a mind-blowing experience, just both intellectually, physically, and emotionally. This movie was really just a space thrill ride from start to finish, and an emotional thrill ride from start to finish. And this is the only Nolan movie that I have on the list, but this is obviously my favorite Nolan movie, right in front of Inception. And I just think that this film has incredibly well executed emotional plot points in this film, and really brilliant acting as well, especially Matthew McConaughey's part. The visual effects in this film are just so hypnotically captivating, especially on a big screen. Nolan really had a specific and just a really specific and ambitious vision to this film. And sure, there are things that I don't think are perfect about this movie. Something about, the whole, most people are mixed on this movie mainly because of the whole thematic element about love versus reason or whatever. Sure, that did kind of bug me, and it still slightly bugs me when I watch the movie, but the movie's positives, I feel, just completely overshadow the negatives, by a long shot. The score to this movie is just emotionally riveting. This is, again, one of those films that never ceases to pull tears out of me on every viewing. And it's just a great sci-fi space exploration film. And yes, at times I do take issue with some of the writing choices. There's some sort of overly explanatory, expository writing, especially in the end when Matthew McConaughey's character is finding certain things out about the universe. There's a lot of verbal explanation, even just throughout the film in general. And yeah, it's not a perfect movie, but it's just so emotionally captivating. It's so visually stunning. And it really is, like I said, it's a movie theater experience that I will never forget. And that's why it's number 18 on my list.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10.
Dad!
9. 8, 7, 6, 5, main engine start, 4, 3, 2.
At number 17, we have The Lobster. The Lobster is such a weird, original, and uniquely dark movie that one of the most uniquely dark films that I've ever seen in my entire life. There's certainly not a film I've seen that's like it. This is a film that's directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, and again, I had to pick one of the movies just by Lanthimos that I just thought stuck with me more, and I just went with The Lobster over The Killing of a Sacred Deer and over Dogtooth, even though The Killing of a Sacred Deer and Dogtooth are both just really well made pieces of art filmmaking. And it's weird because I gave The Killing of a Sacred Deer a better grade than I gave The Lobster, but for some reason, The Lobster, I feel like just had so much to chew on and so much to digest and converse about after the film was done. And I just keep finding myself to really want to revisit it over and over again because it's just packed with so many interesting ideas and so many interesting conveyances. The score, again, is really interesting, very odd, and really that's just really why I love the film so damn much, is that it's so just incredibly different than from anything you've ever seen before, but yet it still finds a way to get you immersed in the world that it's trying to present you, while also just being extremely thought-provoking on top of that. This is a movie that I still talk about with many of my friends who also enjoy filmmaking, and I feel like The Lobster is going to be a topic of film conversation for decades and decades to come, probably forever. And on top of that, it's just really cleverly funny too. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek, clever jabs that it makes towards society and certain norms, certain cultural norms, and it's really interesting to see how they break things down in a very satirical, sometimes whimsical, and sometimes just really clever and dark way.
We've developed a code so that we can communicate with each other, even in front of the others, without them knowing what we are saying. When we turn our heads to the left, it means, I love you more than anything in the world. And when we turn our heads to the right, it means, watch out, we're in danger. We had to be very careful in the beginning not to mix up, I love you more than anything in the world with, watch out, we're in danger.
At number 16, we have The Hateful Eight. So yes, like I said, not multiple films in here by one director, so The Hateful Eight is the Tarantino film that I decided to go with. And yes, it's the most recent Tarantino film, but this film, I just feel like, is Tarantino's tour de force in filmmaking. Tour de force. Pulp Fiction, yeah, obviously, it's a phenomenal piece of filmmaking, and yes, could be considered Tarantino's best work to date. But again, that's just one of those iconic cliche picks where everybody talks about Pulp Fiction. You don't want to hear me talk about Pulp Fiction for the billionth time. My pick for this list was honestly between The Hateful Eight or Inglourious Basterds. Inglourious Basterds has, although it's, again, really great film, there are maybe a few moments in it that I just feel are dragging a bit and don't necessarily need to be there. But The Hateful Eight, I just feel it's a longer film, I believe, and there's not much going on that's like spectacle-like besides some of the violence you get at the end. But it's a 90% dialogue-driven film, and it keeps you captivated. At least it kept me captivated throughout its entire runtime. And I know some people probably will say the same criticism that I have for Inglourious Basterds about how it drags a bit at times. I'm pretty sure a lot of people probably say that about The Hateful Eight, but I just personally don't feel that way. I thought all of the character exchanges that went on were just incredibly captivating, and also just said a lot about the character as the film progressed. The film just has so much to offer without trying too hard at all. I mean, it mostly takes place in one house. And there's just so much to really enjoy and be entertained by, and to also just digest about certain characters and character themes. And it's just a really, really well-made film, and a really impressively made film. And it's also just incredibly hilarious, cleverly funny, outrageously funny, very violent too. It really delivers the violence, that level of Tarantino violence that you were expecting, especially in the third act. It really gives you a lot to enjoy from that aspect of Tarantino's filmmaking. Gotta give it to Hateful Eight. It was a really, really pleasant surprise that Tarantino's most recent film is currently my favorite one. That'll probably change with time, but for right now, Hateful Eight's the winner.
Dignity in defeat. Oh, my fair share, Black Major. Cause when niggers are scared, that's when white folks are safe.
You gonna talk that hateful nigger talk? You can ride up top with OB.
No. You done got me talking politics. I didn't wanna. Like I said, y'all, I'm just happy to be alive.
At number 15, we have The Big Lebowski. So yeah, you could argue that this is maybe slightly one of those iconic cliche picks that everybody talks about. But I don't think it was at that level, and it's just such a good film that is really near and dear to my heart, so I just have to put it in here. I have to shove it in here. But it's obviously my favorite Coen Brothers film. I think this is one of the most brilliant, subtle comedies really ever made. And this is funny because this when I first saw this film back in, I think, 8th grade, I wasn't too big of a fan of it. Some of my friends told me it was just a brilliant film, a really funny movie, so I decided to watch it, and I was kind of underwhelmed by it. Perhaps maybe because I haven't really seen a film's narrative do what this film did, which is basically just meander around with their main character as certain things come to light.
New shit has come to light!
But after several rewatches, I knew that I really loved this movie a lot. And it's just one of those movies that each time you watch it, like, you think you have it down packed, like you think you just know everything about it. But every time you rewatch it, there is just something new or different that you just didn't think about or seen before. And it's just a really fun movie to talk about with your friends and to quote with your friends. Insanely quotable movie, just off the charts. Insanely quotable. I just really, really love this movie. Jeff Bridges just gives an iconic performance in this film as the dude. John Goodman's character, again, iconic performance. This is going to be, I'm sure, this is going to be the performance by John Goodman that everybody's going to be talking about till the end of time. Same with Jeff Bridges and Steve Buscemi, of course. Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie. Donnie, you're out of your element. Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
No one's ever going to forget about that either. Such a brilliant film. I love it to death. And for me personally, it's one of the best comedies ever made.
Album in the late 70s. The music is sort of a techno pop.
So he's pretending to be the abductor.
Well, yeah.
Look, Jeffrey, you don't really kidnap someone you're acquainted with. The whole idea is that the hostage can't be able to identify you after you've let them go.
I know that. What the fuck is with this guy? Who is he?
No.
At number 14, we have The Witch. Now, The Witch is, again, just one of those movies, one of those horror movies that I will truly never forget. Not only because I just had a horrendous movie-going experience where I just had a violent exchange with an incredibly rude audience member, but beyond that, I will never forget it because it's just an astonishing piece of filmmaking. This is a film that really captures what I believe to be a true horror. This film grips you aesthetically. It grips you with its writing, with its directing. It grips you through its storytelling. This is a film that really just constantly made me think about it after I left the theater. There was so many images, so many approaches to its score. I just found very unorthodox, but also just very refreshing and original to see take place on film. The main character, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, just an excellent performance. Her vocal delivery for this type of accent and language was just on point. There's everybody as well. Everybody that was in this movie really made me buy the fact that I was in this time era, in this kind of pilgrim, kind of first settlers, Puritan kind of thing going on. And it was just, this is a film that feels just incredibly real. Maybe not at the very end of the movie. Even then, they did that in a very realistic way. But this is just a film that kind of expresses what it would be like in the time of ignorance that these people lived in, and the kind of horrors that can come about that ignorance. And it was just really dark and interesting to see how this film was able to handle what happened to these characters and the kind of conversations that they would have with each other to try and settle this issue that's happening. And again, the most thing I can really praise about this film is how it's able to grip you aesthetically. There's a lot of slow moving shots in this film that really demand you to be patient, but also just build so much suspense. And it also delivers on his creepy imagery. There's images in this film that will always be in my head forever. So it really does something to your brain after you see it, because the images that it shows you, there's just no way it's going to leave you. It's definitely a film that really takes its time, but it really delivers on what it's supposed to deliver, at least for my expectation. And this film did not let me down in the slightest. It's one of my favorite horror films ever made, and that's why it's number 14 on my list. At number 13, we have You Were Never Really Here. Now, I know that this is a very recent film. This is, I believe, the most recent film that's on my list. But something about this film has just not been able to leave my mind ever since I saw it. And I don't think it's going to leave anytime soon. I obviously bought the Blu-ray on the very first day of its release. And this is just a film that I think is a prime example of just beautiful visual storytelling and just visual art filmmaking. This film was just able to immerse me and captivate me so quickly through the way things were shot and the way things were presented. The cinematography in this movie, made by Tom Townend, was just off the charts. It's brilliant, beautiful cinematography, sound design, again, just really good sound design, and a lot of thanks, again, has to go to the female director, Lynn Ramsey. She was on point with everything that she wanted to approach in this film. You could tell that this film was straight from her vision. Everything from the sound design and the cinematography, those choices were made by the director, and the delicacy of these choices, were handpicked by her. And I love films like this that I know just came straight from somebody's vision and also executed in this incredibly euphoric and captivating way. And on top of that, it's not just a pretty movie. This is a very deep, emotional, and incredibly substantive movie that deals with post-traumatic stress disorder And, you know, I just think it's great because when most people hear about post-traumatic stress disorder, they just think about people that come from the military that experience war. But PTSD isn't just that, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder can really be anything that's traumatic to a person and how it's able to affect their lives thereon. And this film just conveys that aspect in an incredibly staggering way, and in a very visual way that I think most people will really attach themselves to and really enjoy. But on top of that, you know, this isn't a film that's for everybody either. As this film, I feel like I can't really show this film to just a casual person. They might like it, but I don't think they'll really nearly love it as much as I do or as much as other film lovers will. But this to me is just an incredibly breathtaking piece of filmmaking. Joaquin Phoenix just gives an excellent performance in this film, as he usually does. And again, huge props to the director, Lynn Ramsey. This is a female director that I think right now really isn't getting enough credit that she deserves. She really created just a staggering and emotionally breathtaking product, and I gotta give her much praise for that. At number 12, we have Silence. So this is a movie directed by Martin Scorsese, and yes, this is the only Martin Scorsese film that I have on this list. To me, this is 100% the most underrated Martin Scorsese film that he's ever made. This film, to me, is by far the best film that I've ever seen tackle Christianity and just religion in general. This film really knew how to handle this subject to an intensely violent degree, and also in the most thought-provoking and fair degree. You know, films that try to do this, you know, Passion of the Christ, shouldn't even mention in the same conversation as this movie. I haven't really seen much films based on Christianity, at least that are fair and not just complete propaganda like God's Not Dead. I saw Scorsese's previous attempt at a film like this called The Last Temptation of the Christ. I thought that was also a really interesting piece of filmmaking. But to me, this really does handle the topic of religion in one of the most refreshing and satisfying ways possible, because it just tackles this from so many different viewpoints, and most of the time, it's not verbally told to you. You just see things occur, and as you follow the main character played by Andrew Garfield, which, by the way, gives an just incredible performance in this movie that he didn't get recognized for at all. That the year that this film came out, he also did Hacksaw Ridge, and for some reason he got nominated for that film rather than this, which I don't get it, because in my personal opinion, his performance in this movie was honestly by far better than his performance at Hacksaw Ridge. But his character in this film is just going through this constant battle of faith, but it never tells you in this movie, not really once, what you should believe directly. There's certain situations and scenarios that it provides you into which you can kind of interpret what it might be saying, but with a film that really handles this topic of religion, I just think it does a phenomenal job at being thought-provoking and making you think about the subject without really telling you what to believe. And it's a very long movie. It's almost like, I believe it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes, something like that. But I've watched it about 3 times now, and his runtime never bothers me. I am hooked from start to finish. And again, this to me is Scorsese's most underrated work. And there's so much to read into this film. There's so much to think about. As somebody who's totally non-religious, I was able to take so much away from this film. Great film, an astonishing film, very thought-provoking film. It is probably one of my favorite Scorsese films ever made, and just films made in general.
And what would you do for them? Pray? And get what in return? Only more suffering. A suffering only you can end. Not God! Go away from me! I pray too, Rodriguez. It doesn't help. Go on. Pray. but pray with your eyes open.
At number 11, we have Under the Skin. Under the Skin is one of those films that I feel anybody who just loves visual art representation in filmmaking, they need to really get on this film. It really is a breathtaking aesthetic piece of filmmaking. The cinematography is just mind-blowing. The sound design is mind-blowing. The visuals that are conveyed in this film are just so hypnotic, but also at the same time just really thought-provoking. As you're seeing certain visuals in this film, you're so immersed in what's happening, but at the same time there's so many thoughts going through your head at what this film is trying to tell you. And it's just, this film says so much with so little dialogue. This film is pretty like 80 to 90% just visual storytelling. This film is just, again, like if you want to see something that's just a visual feast for your eyes and really makes you think a lot about what it's trying to say, this is an excellent movie for that. This is Kubrick level type visual interpretive art here, and it's just incredibly captivating, horrific, at times can be really beautiful. Scarlett Johansson obviously just gives an excellent performance and a very interesting performance in this film. This really made me respect Scarlett Johansson as an actress much more than I already did, because it just shows that this is somebody that really is dedicated to the art of filmmaking and isn't just completely interested in making just kind of like, you know, blockbuster fun kind of movies and just trying to look pretty. She does look pretty in this movie, obviously, and it's almost the whole point of the movie on top of it, but there's times where she has to go certain lengths for this film, and you can tell that only somebody who really has the amount of appreciation for filmmaking would do these things. And it was just really refreshing to see someone, a big name actress like Scarlett Johansson, take on this level of this kind of level of artistry here. And yeah, this is just, again, just a visually breathtaking film, and that's why it's number 12 on my list. At number 10, we have Black Swan. So Black Swan is the Darren Aronofsky movie that I decided to include in this list. It was a really tough choice because I really do love this guy, Darren Aronofsky. I think he's made just some, again, thought-provoking and aesthetically breathtaking films. I think that's really the formula for what I consider to just be great films. Films that are just aesthetically breathtaking and just make you think a whole lot about what it was trying to tell you. And Darren Aronofsky movies usually achieve that to a pretty high degree. Black Swan has ended up coming on top amongst the battle between Requiem for a Dream, Pi, Noah, Mother even. You know, this Black Swan, I feel like, just contains excellent performances, especially from Natalie Portman. She really knocks it out of the park in this movie. The score to this movie is also just very well incorporated to the emotion and to the theme and just to the character as well. This film, every corner of this movie has meaning. And I feel like, unlike some of other Darren Aronofsky films that can sometimes beat you over the head with a message, I don't think Black Swan really did that as much. And I felt like it was definitely more open to interpretation, more thought-provoking in the sense that you were just trying to piece things together and try to figure out what it was trying to tell you. And it's also just a very thrilling film. There's sequences in this film that are just incredibly suspenseful and will really kind of have you on the edge of your seat because they kind of last for a while and you can almost not even believe that this scenario is occurring. But at the same time, it feels very real and down to earth on top of it, while having this psychological, hallucinatory kind of aspect to it as well. I just think it's a great piece of filmmaking. It's both thought-provoking, aesthetically sound, and the performances are just very well executed. So At number 9, we have A Ghost Story. A Ghost Story, directed and written by David Lowery, is another recent film. I think it might be the second most recent behind You Were Never Really Here. But this film just emotionally struck a chord with me and has stuck with me mentally for such a long time. And it's a film that, even when I just think about it, it makes me emotional. It really does. It really does something to me, because just the way that it's directed and the way that it's executed was done in such a realistic, visual, and just an aesthetically emotional way. The direction in this movie, I feel like, is just what makes it. They took a concept that can easily come off as cheesy and cheap, but they turned it into something that was just so staggeringly meaningful and had so much to say about time and our place in our reality. And this film, every time I watch it, I never fail to cry throughout it. This is a film that when I watch it, I cry at least 2 or 3 times. It really is that emotionally moving for me. The score is perfect. The score for this film is perfect. It matches every note that it's going for. And the song by Dark Rooms called I Get Overwhelmed, I can't really listen to that song without crying. If I'm just driving on the road and I put the song on, it's probably gonna make me cry, even if there's people around. It's just, especially when taking the context into the movie, it pulls something out of me. And there's some people who would probably agree with me on this, but I know that there are people that felt kind of disconnected from this film. But for me, it just artistically connected with me in the most sincere, emotional way. And this is a film that I will never forget, and I will come back to time and time again. And just an astonishing piece of filmmaking, and I can't give it enough credit. That's why it's number 9 on my list. At number 8, we have Mulholland Drive. So this is the David Lynch movie that I decided to go with. It was a tough battle, but Mulholland Drive has always just blew my mind in the most memorable way. This was a film that I just felt was masterful in the art department, because it's so thrilling and it's so suspenseful, and it's also just incredibly unpredictable. This is probably by far one of the most unpredictable films that I've ever seen. But yet it has so much in it for you to unpack, and so much in it for you to converse about with other people who have also seen it. Yeah, it's very unorthodox. Yeah, some people might call it pretentious or whatever, but art is kind of pretentious. So if you don't accept that fact, then we're not ever going to get anywhere. The performances in this movie, again, just excellent. Like at first, at the very beginning of this movie, when Naomi Watts' character gets introduced and she delivers those first lines. At first I was like, that sounds really cheap and forced. What was up with that? But as it goes along, and as you understand, or kind of have an understanding, I don't think anybody fully understands this film to its T, but at the end of it, you see why that made sense and why David Lynch chose to direct the beginning in that way. And again, this is just a movie that will have you guessing throughout its runtime. It's incredibly thought-provoking. The aesthetics are pretty decent as well. This is just a film that I think every film lover should really try to go out and see. Mulholland Drive, for me, is just one of those must-see movies for film lovers, just because it really represents what I love so much about art. It provokes so much conversation. There's so many ideas and so many things left ambiguous for people to chew on and to just discuss and converse about, especially with its jarring and very unconventional ending. It's just there's so much to bring up debate and talk about when it comes to this movie. So to me, it really shows you what's so great about art filmmaking, and that's why it's number 8 on my list. At number 7, we have Drive, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. Refn is one of my current favorite contemporary film directors. Drive just happens to be the film that really introduced me to Refn. I'd never even heard of him until I watched this film. And kind of like The Big Lebowski, it was one of those films that when I first saw it, I had heard so many people talk so many great things about it. But when I first saw it, I didn't really think that it really lived up to what everybody was saying about it. I think it's mostly just because I haven't been exposed to many films that were approached and directed in this way. And once I rewatched it a few times, and once I started to consider why this film was great, and in terms of what everybody was saying about it, it really, really grew on me in the best way possible, and it's just become a really memorable part of my life, and just one of the stepping stones of me really being confident in what I know that I love about film and what I wanted to pursue in filmmaking. And Drive is just one of those aesthetically staggering and jarring movies to where everything is just perfect in terms of its aesthetics. It's the score is on point with every form of delicacy you can imagine. The cinematography is full of just beauty and meaning with every single shot. The characters are just very well and subtly expressed in this film. Very well acted. This film is just, it really wins on all phases of filmmaking. Sure, maybe not the story. The story might be the least inspiring aspect of this film, but everything, it's not about the story. This film is obviously not really trying to be about the story, even though it does have some very intriguing layers to its narrative as well. This film is obviously about the art of filmmaking, and it's great because of the art of filmmaking through its aesthetics and how it can just tell you so much visually without much being said. Kind of like You Were Never Really Here, which I feel like was kind of inspired by Drive. It's just a really grand display of visual storytelling through its aesthetics, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of the most memorable movies for me. There's just so much to appreciate about this film. It's one of the coolest movies ever made, in my opinion, and it's definitely a film that I'm never going to forget and couldn't for the life of me leave it out of my top 10.
Now you just got a little boy's father killed. You almost got us killed. And now you're lying to me. So how about this? From now on, every word out of your mouth is the truth. Or I'm gonna hurt you. Do you understand? Now what did Cook tell you?
At number 6, we have The Shining. So yeah, this is kind of one of those iconic, universally known, well-made films that everybody knows about. But The Shining is just one of those films, honestly, one of the best horror films ever made, that really just stuck with me for a very long time. I watched it when I was pretty young, and it was pretty terrifying when I was young, and it still is kind of terrifying now as an adult. Sure, you can say that some things are slightly dated, but for the most part, I think that for a horror film made in the late 70s, it definitely withstood the test of time, and it didn't really falter much in that aspect. There's still so much to appreciate when it comes to this film. The way that Kubrick approached horror, with again the cinematography, the suspense that was approached by its cinematography and its sound design, the iconic acting performance by Jack Nicholson. This movie just has so much to offer for film in general, and also just for the horror genre. There's so many films that came out after The Shining that were inspired by The Shining. In my opinion, the Killing of a Sacred Deer is definitely inspired by The Shining. There's, again, like, this is just a movie that I think will always go down as one of the best horror films ever made. There's like a handful of iconic quotes and iconic sequences in this film that are just embedded in film culture and is never going to leave. And I really, really love this movie. And yeah, again, it is kind of one of those iconic classic films that everybody knows about, but it's definitely a film that's still, in my opinion, worth talking about, worth discussing, and worth appreciating.
How do you like it?
At number 5, we have Children of Men. Now, I'm not sure of how many people have got to see this movie or have heard about it, but this is another film made by Alfonso Cuarón, the same guy that I mentioned earlier with the film Y tu mamá también, earlier on my list. There's only 2 directors in this film list, I believe, that I included multiple films from. I know I said earlier that I didn't do it much, but I did do it with 2 directors because I just couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. But Children of Men is just an exquisite piece of filmmaking. It's really an astonishing piece of art that was just so captivating through every aspect. I mean, I found the story itself to just be really engrossing and very emotionally draining, but at the same time just really captivating and very intriguing. It takes place in a kind of like dystopian future where everything has gone to shit because women can't have babies anymore, and it kind of shows you what that would be like in a future setting, and I just thought it was established and executed in a very immersive way. The cinematography in this movie is, no joke, probably some of the best camera work that I've ever seen in filmmaking, period. There's a few one-shot sequences in this movie that are just absolutely mind-blowing in terms of how they were even able to even get that done. I'm sure that the process of the director just trying to nail the sequence that he wants in one shot had to be a bitch to try to do. So there's just so much to love about this movie. It's very intense. It's got some really meaningful character moments. Michael Caine is in this movie as well. His character arc is very, very touching. Clive Owen stars in this movie, and I thought he did a brilliant job at conveying his character in this. Julianne Moore also in this movie. She's not in it for long, but when she is in it, she is good. You know, she's great as usual. I just really, really love this movie a lot, and I just think it took that concept and just did it in an amazing way. And I think maybe some people were slightly let down by this movie because it perhaps didn't provide enough action, perhaps. But for me, even the parts that didn't have action, which there is a lot, most of it isn't action based, but even those parts I just found just truly captivating and truly engaging. It's a very substantive movie. It's a very aesthetically breathtaking movie. I know I've used that phrase a lot throughout this list, aesthetically breathtaking, but those are the movies that I tend to just really love. Films that really can tell you a lot and can convey a lot through its aesthetics alone, and Children of Men is just an excellent example of that. At number 4, we have Brazil. Brazil is directed by Terry Gilliam, who is responsible for directing a few of the Monty Python movies. He's definitely part of the Monty Python crew. He also directed many other great films after that, including the Zero Theorem. I can't really think of any on top of my head, but he is a pretty well-known film director. And Brazil, to me, is definitely deserving of his number 4 spot. To me, it's certainly one of the best films ever made. I think, not just personally, but objectively speaking, I really do think it deserves to be at least in the top 25 of just flat-out best films ever made. It really is one of the most brilliant social satires that I've ever seen, because it just takes so many aspects about society and just about humanity in general and about culture, and it just crams all of this clever satire into this film in a very natural and funny way. It's not always funny, but this is a very cleverly funny movie, but the comedy in it serves for some sort of clever and intelligent purpose to convey something about society or something about the government or just humanity in general, like I said. But to me, again, this is just, there's so much in this movie. And again, this is just an aesthetically breathtaking film. I'm going to keep using that phrase because it's the best way I can really describe these films. The cinematography is so purposeful and beautiful at the same time. The acting performances in this film are spot on. Jonathan Pryce, I believe, is the main character that we follow. Or that's his actor's name. I forgot. I think his name in the movie is Sam Lowry, I believe. But his character is very interesting. He's kind of this character that doesn't see much hope for him in terms of his goals, but he has this kind of fantasy that he tries to follow, and then he does things within the society to try to achieve that fantasy. And just that premise alone just has so much to say about humans living in a society. And again, just a brilliant social satire, brilliant comedy. It's directed to near perfection. It's written to near perfection. There's so much to talk about and dissect and to analyze about this film after you're done watching it. It's a brilliant discussion piece. Definitely deserves its number 4 spot. I love Brazil. I love Terry Gilliam as a filmmaker, and that's why it's number 4 on my list.
Well, sorry you've had a wasted journey.
I think we will have a little look at you.
No, you can't.
I think we should do, yes.
Have you got a 27B stroke 6?
27B stroke 6. 27B stroke 6. Now look what you've done to him.
Alright guys, we're heading into the top 3, and this truly was where shit got pretty dicey. This is where I was really mentally conflicted on how I should really order these. My number 1 has kind of been that way, and I knew that it was going to be my number 1, but I kind of second guessed myself as I was evaluating these top 3 choices. So, without further ado, here we go. Here goes number 3. At number 3, we have Birdman. Birdman is directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu, and I just love that film director's film catalog. Amores Perros is just an amazing piece of filmmaking. 21 Grams, I feel like is one of his most underrated films. Babel is, I think, the first film that I've ever seen by him that I thought was astonishing. The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio was also just an extraordinary piece of filmmaking. But at the end of the day, Birdman is just my personal favorite. And one could argue that it might just be his best film in general, besides it being my favorite. Just the performances all around are just off the charts, especially given the task that they had to do with all these really long one-shot sequences where they just had to pull off the performance, and if they didn't get it, they just had to restart the entire scene and start from the very beginning. It was a very hard task for everyone's involved. The actors, the entire cast, and most especially the film director and the cinematographer. This was just I could tell that this was a very difficult piece of filmmaking to put together, and to also just make it engaging on top of this style, because this style, if not done in an engaging and captivating way, can come off as a little boring. But yet this movie just kept me extremely engaged throughout its runtime. And just the theme on its own, the theme of this movie, I think just hits home with me personally, because it just has a lot to do with art. It has to do with a lot of things that come with art, whether it's about the artist just wanting to receive some sort of admiration or respect, because our main character, Regan Thompson, played by Michael Keaton, who just, by the way, excellent performance by Michael Keaton. Definitely, in my opinion, one of his best performances in his entire career. But follows his character as a person who is known in the movie community, but is only known for doing these kind of mindless blockbuster movies. And he's just trying to show people that he's more than that. He is a person who does love art and can create something meaningful, and isn't just a person who's there to be a puppet for Hollywood. And isn't just there to entertain people as they shove popcorn in their mouth. Like he wants to show people that he's much more than that. And the theme, again, that kind of themes like that really just hit home with me, because the way that it's executed and the certain scenarios that occur in this film, among its characters, especially played by Edward Norton. His character is just this kind of cynical, over the top, pretentious, artsy douchebag. And you have just all these characters that most people just who love film they know these characters. They know that these people exist. So it's just really interesting to see these people and these characters portrayed in this movie conveying this theme, and also just being very artistically captivating in the process. The cinematography is mind-blowing. Everybody knows about the one-shot sequence style of this movie. It's incredible just to see someone pull off this movie the way that they did. The sound is incredible. The score of the drum beat soundtrack that just really gives this kind of random and improvish, off the cuff kind of style. It's just a really, really captivating film. Very thought provoking as well in terms of theme, and it also has a really ambiguous ending that kind of ties a lot of the themes together if you think about it. And this is just one of those movies that I'm just gonna always think about. I'm always gonna be talking about. And I'm just very glad that this film exists. I watched it about 3 or 4 times in theaters, watched it 3 or 4 more times on Blu-ray, and it's going to be a film that I'm most definitely going to be watching throughout my years.
Structure. Nothing here about intention. It's just a bunch of crappy opinions backed up by even crappier comparisons. You write a couple of paragraphs, and you know what? None of this costs you fucking anything. You risk nothing. Nothing. I'm a fucking actor. This play cost me everything.
At number 2, we have There Will Be Blood. There Will Be Blood is a film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, which is a film director that I absolutely love. I haven't seen a Paul Thomas Anderson movie that I haven't loved. I haven't seen Inherent Vice, of course, so that doesn't count yet. But to me, There Will Be Blood is his finest work. There Will Be Blood just achieves everything that I could think of in terms of filmmaking. It exceeds on the acting. I mean, the performance by Daniel Day-Lewis is almost impossible to believe. He's just so wrapped up in this character, and he conveys every emotion and feeling out of this character in such a very convincing way, and in a very captivating way as well. There's not much reference point for Daniel Day-Lewis to have for this character so he can work off of. I mean, it's an oil man in the 19th century just trying to make his way, just trying to be successful capitalistically, and it's very hard to pull this character off. And I remember when I first watched this movie back, by the way, one of the first movies that really got me into filmmaking was definitely this film. I had to be in 7th grade when I first watched it. He pulled off the accent in this movie very well, and he was very convincing as a character. To me, this is definitely one of the best acting performances I've ever seen in film. And beyond the acting, I mean, well, I guess I shouldn't leave the acting yet because you have a really good performance by Paul Dano as well. For me, Paul Dano is just one of those actors that doesn't get enough appreciation. Every time I see him in a movie, he blows me away. He doesn't have much main roles, but whenever he has a side role in a movie, he usually knocks out of the park, and his character usually has something very vital to do with the film. And with There Will Be Blood, his character just provides another interesting layer to the themes of this film regarding religion, greed, just fraudulence. It really shows you a lot about what capitalism and the strive for money and the greedy nature that capitalism can pull out of people, and how that can change their character and really kind of compromise their integrity in many ways. And this film, just having Paul Dano's character and Daniel Day-Lewis's character as they just kind of clash, and they're always trying to kind of one-up each other, or Paul Dano's character is always trying to do something to make him feel dominant over Daniel's character. And that kind of subtle fight for power and dominance is just so interesting, because it just has a lot to say about religion, has a lot to say about capitalism, a lot to say about greed, a lot to say about honesty, about happiness, about a lot of different things, about personal accountability. And again, this on top of the great and just the brilliant writing, the brilliant acting, the aesthetics are top notch. The score in this film is so interesting and so intriguing, and the score just combined with the cinematography it just creates such, again, just a very immersive movie. Very interesting score choices that I remember when I was watching this as a kid, this just seemed very unusual to me, and it still is unusual, but it worked. And even when I was a kid, like the score and the choice of scores for certain moments, still gets me. I think it works in such an odd way, such an odd score choice, but yet it's able just to provoke so much emotion. There Will Be Blood is, to me, just a near perfect film. It's one of those films that each time I revisit it, I get I get somehow more appreciation for it than I did previously. And it's a film that I definitely think should be on some sort of objective best movie list, at least in a top 30. It's a really, really well-made film, both thematically, both aesthetically, and just overall, just Paul Thomas Anderson gives it his all, and that's why it's number 2 on my list.
What would you like, Eli?
$10,000.
For what?
For my church.
That's good. That's a good one.
Alright guys, it's time for lucky number 1. This is the moment that you waited for. Hopefully you didn't skip through all the other movies and you just skip straight to the number 1, but if you did, that's cool. I don't give a shit. Time for my number 1. I think most of y'all might know what it is already. Here it is. Without further ado, my number 1 favorite film of all time is...
There was me, that is Alex, and my 3 droogs, that is Pete, Georgie, and Dim. And we sat in the Korova milk bar trying to make up our razoo dogs what to do with the evening.
A Clockwork Orange. I don't even know where to start with this film. Where do I start with this just soul-numbing, thought-provoking, provocative, profound, aesthetically engaging film? This is the second Stanley Kubrick film on my list. This is the second or third director that actually included multiple films for. A Clockwork Orange, to me, is just objectively, I think it's one of the greatest films of all time. Like, besides my personal opinion, I think it deserves a list somewhere in the objective best films ever made. This film has such a unique style to it that you really have never seen a film like this. And if you have, it's because someone got inspired by this later on down the road. The score to this movie just adds such a twisted and euphoric layer to it. Make it to where your eyes will never be away from the screen. Your eyes are just glued and attached to everything that's happening. And it's such a hard watch as well, especially for people who have never seen it before. This film will disturb you to your core. At least it did for me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I still think about that, just this film as a whole. And it has so much to say on top of its brilliant aesthetics. I mean, this film, what I like so much about it is that it's, again, like I said, incredibly thought-provoking in terms of morality, free will, the government's place to police morality. So much to say about these really important philosophical aspects of life, but it does it in, I guess you could say explicit way, but not in the most explicit way. It just does things. This film has a very juxtaposed style to it, and that's one of my favorite aspects of filmmaking is juxtapositions and how it's able to really engage you and make you think about current things that are occurring. This is one of the only films that I've ever seen that has a main character in it that's just so evil and twisted, but yet manages to make you kind of care about him and care about his well-being in certain parts. And it's kind of hard to do that. I mean, in most movies, when you have a main character that's just a piece of garbage, all you want them to do is suffer. And in this movie, it makes you question that notion. It really makes you think about whether or not we should want those things to happen to these evil people. And it also makes you think a lot about whether or not it's possible for people to change who they are, especially if they're that messed up. And just to get beyond the theme, the acting in this movie is superb. I think Malcolm McDowell gives one of the best acting performances ever in movie history. I can't really see anybody else besides Malcolm playing this role. And the story, I mean, this movie just has so much backstory to it as well. So many behind the scenes stories that are just like, holy shit. I mean, the famous one is that the famous Singing in the Rain scene. was basically improv. Originally, Kubrick was filming that scene without the song in it, without Malcolm McDowell's character singing anything. But he just felt that there was something missing. He felt that it felt flat, and he just asked Malcolm if he knew any songs to sing. And the only song that he said he knew he could sing was "Singing in the Rain," and immediately they tried it out, and it just worked. It just worked so well with what Kubrick was going for. And it created such an iconic moment in cinema history. And it's just crazy how something so culturally impactful like that can happen just off of just a spark idea on set. I just think this film is incredibly stylistic. You've never seen a film really been put together in this way. And it's also on top of that, just again, very thought-provoking, aesthetically engaging, really just disturbing and twisted and horrific at the same time. It has so much to say about morals, about free will, about society, about government. I absolutely adore this film. This film really made me realize the impactful power of filmmaking, and is really what helped me decide what I wanted to do with my life. And I just can't give enough praise to Kubrick and this film. It's one of the most memorable, most twisted, and most thought-provoking movies that I've ever seen. And that's why Clockwork Orange makes it at number 1 on my top 25 list. Well, that's it, everybody. I'm sorry if this video was too lengthy, but those are my top 25 personal favorite films of all time. I hope that some of y'all can relate to this list in some way. I hope it's not too divisive, but if it is, I want to hear what y'all think about it. So if you really enjoyed this video, and if you want to contribute your thoughts on this video, please leave some comments down in the comment section below. And if you really like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the Misfit Pawn channel to be updated on more film-related content.